Talk of mental health and gymnastics has gone hand in hand this year ever since Simone Biles dropped out of the Tokyo Olympics due to her mental health struggles. This sparked a lot of controversy about how mental health is handled in the professional sports world. Aly Raisman, a former Olympic gymnast, recently spoke up about athletes speaking their truth. Stay tuned to find out all about it. The discussion surrounding mental health and professional sports athletes. Mental health has become a topic of conversation that has been highly discussed and focused on this past year, especially during the pandemic, where mental health struggles are at an all-time high. One area where mental health has been discussed a lot is the Tokyo Olympics, specifically the women's gymnastics team. It's no coincidence that the topic has gotten a lot of attention this year, given the long lead-up to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, the ongoing threat of COVID-19, and the controversies surrounding this year's event. It's been exceptionally stressful for athletes, worsening issues that have plagued professional sports for years, one of which is the taboo topic of mental health. For most people, the spring of 2020 was terrible, and athletes were no exception. Athletes had been in limbo since the 2020 Games and were officially postponed at the end of March, unsure if or when the sporting event would take place. That kind of uncertainty may take a toll on Olympic and Paralympic hopefuls. Their training schedules are painstakingly constructed to get them into peak mental and physical shape for the Olympics. If their events were to be rescheduled, they could lose weeks of hard work and be forced to adapt to a new, longer training plan. COVID-19 limitations had already disrupted some athletes' training, and not knowing if they'd have to find a means to regain their fitness in time for the Summer Games added to the stress of the pandemic's early weeks. The most stressful time was when we didn't know what would happen, says Olympic swimmer Haley Anderson. I was home alone in a quarantine in my LA apartment, and going through that, for me, spending even one day out of the water is really difficult. And when it was 2 days and 3 days, it was the unknown of, if they don't postpone, how can we get in shape in time to compete? You can see this from first-hand accounts. The unknown and the isolation for many athletes made everything far more stressful than it already was. Aly Raisman, and why it's important for athletes to speak their truth. One athlete who has become almost an advocate for mental health in the professional sport world is Aly Raisman. In the years since she retired from professional gymnastics, Aly Raisman has become a mental health spokesperson, and she's glad to see more athletes coming up about mental health. It's really essential that athletes are expressing their truth and being honest, Raisman says in an exclusive footage from Thursday's Better Together mental health storytelling series, in which she is the keynote speaker. I have so much respect for both of them, Raisman adds when asked by MTV host Nessa about high-profile athletes like Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles, revealing their mental health stories and if these stories are touching people. Raisman continued, speaking on how all this talk of mental health, especially within the professional athlete world, is a very positive thing and something that is very long overdue. She stated, "You know Simone is a friend of mine. I don't know Naomi, but I'm a big fan of Naomi, and I think that both of them are doing really important things. I recognize that it must be really hard to do that, to be so honest and vulnerable, but by them speaking their truth, they are really helping so many people, and we may never know how many lives that they've saved and how many people feel less alone and feel the courage to ask for help because they spoke up." Raisman says it's incredible that people are now supporting athletes that are speaking up, and it's becoming more of a normalized situation. I don't think I know anyone in my life who has never struggled with any type of anxiety or depression. It's very common, and I think it's really important that we continue to amplify people's voices, not just people in the spotlight. Everyone has the power to make somebody else feel better and feel heard. Raisman told People, an online publication in July, that she was proud of the 24-year-old for withdrawing from the team event at the Tokyo Olympics to focus on her mental health. Simone has more pressure than any other gymnast I've ever seen in my lifetime, and it's a lot, says Raisman. And I think that it's a bigger conversation of, there needs to be better systems out there to support the mental health of athletes and to help athletes navigate how much pressure they're under. Pro athletes who have recently spoken up about their mental health struggles. Tennis champion Naomi Osaka withdrew from 3 Grand Slam tournaments earlier this year, claiming that she had suffered from depression and anxiety as a result of continued continual attention and the press requirements imposed on players. After suffering from the twisties, a perilous lack of air awareness that gymnasts can experience, Biles decided not to compete in many of her events during the Olympics. Mental health struggles come in all shapes and sizes, and they can impact anyone, even those like Osaka or Biles, who seem to be at the top of their game with everything together. You can see the conversation is headed in the right direction, and more people are finally opening up about their mental health struggles. Being a professional athlete comes with immense pressure, stress, and high expectations. That's enough to make anyone go crazy. The reason why it is so important that we highlight the topic of mental health within the highly competitive elite athlete world is so we can teach those in the generations below us how to correctly manage their mental health in such a huge pressure environment. Stay tuned to find out 3 ex-Olympic gymnasts who have come together to force positive change in the sport. 3 ex-gymnasts have set up a new support group to force change in sport. But why? In the past few years, more and more claims of abuse and sexual assault have been coming forward from young female gymnasts, some who are barely 13. One of the most notable recent cases that surfaced was the Larry Nassar case, the ex-doctor of the official USA gymnastics team, where he assaulted an overwhelming amount of young athletes and got away with it for years and years until finally one brave girl decided to speak up, essentially starting a Me Too movement within the USA gymnastics world. On a similar note, just recently, 3 ex-Olympic gymnasts opened up about abuse they faced at the hands of professionals within the elite gymnastics community. Min Kumbez was only 15 years old when she competed in gymnastics for Australia at the 2000 Olympic Games, and like so many other females in the sport at the time and after, she was subjected to constant fat shaming because she was required to maintain a weight that was much below what was natural for her body form. It was a difficult procedure for Kumbez. She also claimed to have been subjected to emotional and verbal assault. Following the Olympics, Kumbez retired from gymnastics and began aerial skiing, a sport in which she also represented Australia at the youth level. She recovered psychologically quickly after leaving gymnastics, but was reminded of her childhood trauma earlier this year when the Australian Human Rights Commission, the HRC, released a damning study into the sports culture in Australia. Gymnastics Australia issued an unqualified apology after the investigation revealed that the sport has permitted a culture of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Kumbez did not testify during the HRC hearing, but she claimed she devoured the report and went on a search for other athletes who had had similar experiences. Kumbez met Alison Quigley and Sophie Vivian on the international Zoom call set up by UK gymnastics survivors. Quigley did make a submission to the HRC inquiry, detailing how, as a top gymnast in Melbourne in the 1980s, she was groomed and raped by her coach. Dr. Vivian contributed to exposing abusive practices at the Australian Institute of Sport when she told the ABC about being tormented, put to harsh physical workouts that resulted in injuries, fat-shamed, and inappropriately groped as a preteen girl. As a result, she has been traumatized for years. Kumbez originally mentioned the notion of forming a non-profit organization to help other athletes who had been physically or psychologically abused, and didn't know where to turn during that Zoom call. Kumbez told ABC Sport, "I was horrified to learn that all the things that were happening 20 years ago were still going on." As a result, Athlete Rights Australia, a new non-profit advocacy organization, was founded. And there you have it, everything you need to know surrounding Aly Raisman and how she recently spoke in an interview about how important it is for athletes to speak their truth when it comes to their struggles with mental health, and how she praised Simone for speaking out to millions and millions. Additionally, we also delved into 3 ex-Olympic gymnasts who have come together to help create a support group for those athletes who suffer from abuse at the hands of professionals. Make sure to let us know your thoughts down below. What did you think when Simone dropped out of the Tokyo Olympics? Do you think mental health needs to be openly discussed more in the professional athlete world? But if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss any of our new and upcoming content. Thanks for watching.